Meeting to order. Sandra, you want to call the roll?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Courtney League as designee for Secretary Chaudhry.
Present.
Mr. Derenberg is present. Vice Chair Eberhardt is present. Secretary Flora is present. Mr. Gibbons.
Present.
Ms. Lala.
Present.
Krishna Talur as designee for Dr. Wright.
Present.
And Chair Casemeyer.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any public comment today?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Alex, you want to give your report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you, Vice Chair Eberhardt, and members of the Commission. Great to see you today. This month, my Executive Director's report is a little bit longer. I have 5 items to quickly share with you all. I'll try to be as brief as I can. The first is to report that the IAC's first ever booth at a summer conference of the Maryland Association of Counties last month was a success. Very respectable number of conference participants stopped by the booth to talk with me and with staff, and we distributed IAC literature and answered questions to foster greater understanding about Maryland's pre-K-12 school facilities world and about what the IAC does. Although the winter conference that's coming up in December will not have booths, I will still be there presenting at a session and continuing my outreach conversations with stakeholders. Second item is a brief update on the discussions with Worcester County around its school facilities portfolio. On August 22nd, the Worcester County Commission and the Worcester County Board of Education convened their second meeting of a work group to look at their school facilities portfolio that included the IAC to discuss the needs of their district, strategies they might use, and how the state might participate in potential projects. In that meeting, I presented an updated summary of 2 potential scenarios in which the state might participate in a pair of projects, including a replacement of the Buckingham Elementary School. I'm very pleased to report that after discussion, the work group members, which included Senator Carrozza, Board of Ed members, the superintendent, and county officials, voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Ed and the county that they adopt the scenario that will result in the 3 parties engaging in an MOU to implement 2 projects in sequence. One to replace Buckingham Elementary in the next couple of years, and a second to renovate or replace Berlin Intermediate School in short succession. We're working now with the school system and county on the language for that MOU and expect to bring that forward to you for your approval in the coming weeks. In my view, this progress is significant, and it means we're much closer to seeing major improvements to the Worcester County schools portfolio that will benefit all the students of Worcester County for many years to come. And I will just note that to be efficient, I added visits to Dorchester County Public Schools and Somerset County Public Schools on that trip to meet with the new superintendents there, making that a 3-for-1. Very good progress. Really appreciated meeting those 2 new superintendents and offering the IAC support to them and their facilities staffs. Third item, I'm happy to briefly report on positive progress achieved recently in another county, Cecil County. Over the past few months, I've been engaged in conversations with Cecil County Public Schools and Cecil County government around closing the funding gap for their Northeast Middle High School project. The IAC has committed to contributing just over $100 million in state funds to that 2-school project over the coming years, with nearly $50 million already allocated. A couple of weeks ago, the Cecil County Executive and County Council took the first step towards forward funding the amounts needed from the local side to move the project forward on the optimal, most cost-saving schedule and bring both a new middle school and a new high school online within the next 3 years. The IAC supported the local officials in arriving at what I believe is the best possible solution for both the students and the taxpayers of Cecil County, and I'm extremely pleased to see that project moving forward now. Fourth, and I will also make a comment that our support work with the counties extends to 2 additional work groups this fall. The first with Frederick County and the second with Calvert County. The work group with Frederick County is to essentially take a look at their school portfolio needs and it includes local and state officials, school district and county folks, and Commissioner Derenberg is the IAC's representative to that, and I have been attending to support with information through presentations to that work group. It's met twice already in Frederick and is scheduled to meet another 2 to 3 times before December, when it will generate a report for the General Assembly. And then in Calvert County, similar work group is happening at the local level. And I am the IAC's representative to that work group. It has met once already and will continue to meet over the next couple of months to take a look at not just its portfolio needs, but specifically whether it might want to consider a public-private partnership option for a solution in the manner that Prince George's County recently did. Obviously, a lot of folks have been looking at Prince George's County's work and success there. And Calvert is essentially moving forward with that, similar to the hard look that Charles County gave through a work group last year on P3. So just a little picture of the landscape around the counties right now in how the local jurisdictions are coming together to take hard looks at the needs and hard looks at how to meet the needs. Finally, just a brief update on air conditioning of schools and classrooms. The IAC reaches out to LEAs periodically to update the number of schools and classrooms without air conditioning around the state that are self-reported by the school districts to us each year. In our most recent update, the LEAs indicated that there are only 6 schools in 2 counties with any classrooms remaining unair conditioned. And in almost all of those, it's a very small number, somewhere between 1 and 3, with all the other classrooms having air conditioning. This is huge progress compared with even 2 to 3 years ago, and quite a different world compared with 5 to 10 years ago, when the lack of air conditioning in schools in Maryland was a major concern. So I'm very pleased to share that news. Again, it's the most recent self-reported data. Things can change, systems do go out, it's not to say that, there won't be some classrooms lacking air conditioning a few months from now. Obviously, we'll be turning our focus more to heat in a couple of months here, or weeks even, than air conditioning. But this is great progress. And I'll note just briefly that these statistics do not include private or charter schools in privately owned facilities. That we don't have info on. But in terms of the public school buildings, huge improvement over just a few years ago. So happy to stand for any questions you might have or to proceed with the consent agenda.
Any questions, Mr. Derenberg?
Well, I heard that you had a little meeting with Mabe in Ocean City. Is that true?
I'm sorry, say again? Couldn't hear you.
Did you have a meeting with Mabe members in Ocean City? Mabe?
I had some conversations, yes, in the hallways, talking and walking with folks in Ocean City, and talked about collaborating on potential trainings for school district staff, boards of education members over the coming months about school construction and how we can help provide information to them and support them in their decision-making processes. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Alex? Secretary Flora?
Yeah, first of all, Alex, great news on the air conditioning status. As we well know, as the heat days keep rising in frequency and more of, it's just so critical. And I presume a lot of these schools would end up being community shelters also in extreme conditions from a resiliency standpoint. So that's really great news. And
they can be.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an aspiration, I think, over time.
Yeah.
Department of Emergency Management and sort of how we work with communities in that regard. And so while we may lose power in those kinds of instances, it's still good to know that we're, trying to make these as good as possible. The other question was related to these working groups that you're doing, which is great. I'm really thrilled to hear that. We've been hearing from the planning side this kind of tension, I guess, between growth and development and adequate public facilities ordinance as it relates to capacity of schools. I know you can't answer that right now. I just want to raise it as something that maybe we could look at in the future to sort of get a better understanding of where those particular areas are that would be influencing or impacting the ability for what we call sustainable growth strategies, and that we know we need growth in some areas. It needs to be directed and done appropriately. But just as we have water and sewer type needs, schools have been raised in some of those types of areas in terms of as a deterrent towards growth in areas that are actually the best for growth in terms of population centers. And so I just want to mostly raise it because as you're working, pulling together these working groups and having these opportunities, I think, to work with the LEAs, that maybe might need to be part of the conversation somewhere along the way, or how we can work with you at the Department of Planning on this one, so that we're all in tandem about where those development and those particular pressures are as it relates to having those adequate facilities and everything in place. So I'll leave it there. I just wanted to mostly flag it as something that I'd be interested in pursuing further with you at some point.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I might just give a quick bit of information in response.
Yeah.
Madam Secretary, yes, that topic has absolutely been very explicitly included in some of those work group discussions, particularly the most recent ones in Frederick. We are keeping tabs on the issue and looking at it, and we are responding with information about the schools, their utilization, and IAC funding opportunities for school districts that need to respond in terms of school capacity to increasing demand that comes from growth of housing. And so we've had discussions with a couple of different school districts recently around that issue, around APFOs, the interactions, all of that. We're definitely giving serious attention to that issue. And I would just say that in a nutshell, the IAC is already positioned to support school capacity expansion where there is growth. And so I personally don't see anything in our funding structure to be an obstacle. I don't see us as an agency doing anything but supporting school districts and meeting growth needs within the constraints of our appropriations. The big obstacle is the shortfall of funding to do that capacity work. And so we're definitely ready to engage with any and all local and state stakeholders around that issue. Also aware of the governor's focus on housing expansion and equity, and obviously looking to support that how we can. But I think the IAC is already essentially well primed to support that, and are currently moving allocations of funds to where the growth is and where the evidence shows that the growth is likely to happen. We're supporting that through projects within, again, appropriations constraints. So we'll continue to engage with that. Happy to chat further at any time with you if you like.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to our team if we can support you and our regional planners that work, on the ground. Also, Chuck Boyd on our team is on the call, I see. So feel free to reach out to us if we can support that in any way.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions for Alex? Just wanted to make two quick comments. First, I wanted to thank Mr. Derenberg for volunteering and taking the time to be on this Frederick County work group that Alex mentioned. And secondly, I wanted to thank Alex and his staff for really doing a great job with the Worcester County folks in terms of coming to hopefully an agreement about their construction plan. I wanted to thank the Worcester County Board and the Worcester County commissioners for sitting down and really working like working out a solution that, should be possible everywhere when people are reasonable and want to get to a conclusion. They just did a great job of coming together and realizing what's best for everybody. And it's a really good example of collaboration. Okay, consent agenda, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Items 2A through 2F are administrative items that include the minutes from last month's meeting, contract awards, revisions to previously approved contracts, contract cancellations. We have this month one easement, one site approval, one property transfer, and one informational only land transfer. And so staff and I stand for questions on any of these items.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Do I hear a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
So move, Gloria Lawler.
Second by Mr. Gibbons. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, item number 3 is an informational presentation by Cassandra regarding our state cost share formulas. Cassandra?
Thanks, Mr.
Actually,
Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Alex is going to start us with some opening comments. and
Okay.
then-
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as you know, following Maryland law, the IAC uses a formula that it has adopted in regulation to determine the state cost share of eligible project costs for each county. Also following the law, the IAC applies this formula every 2 years to recalculate those state cost share percentages using current input data that it receives from other state agencies. Last July, we conducted this update process to establish the cost shares for the fiscal 2025 and 2026 cycles, and you all approved the results of that. But at that time, we acknowledged that the formula had not been updated in some years and deserves a full evaluation and, if needed, modernization or updating to adjust to the changing economic and educational landscapes, and that the IAC would undertake that evaluation through a stakeholder engagement process during fiscal 2025. It's now time to begin that process, which we expect will take a number of months. Today, we take the first step by providing a refresher, so to speak, about the state local cost share and how it has worked to date. I thank Cassandra for preparing this presentation and will now hand over the mic to her to walk us through it.
Thanks, Alex. And of course, it's always a pleasure to present information to you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So the IAC is required by statute to adopt a cost sharing formula and to recalculate the cost shares based upon that formula every 2 years. As Alex mentioned, we need to start our next calculation cycle for FY 27 and 28 in the coming months. And before we do that, we will consider bringing you some suggested COMAR revisions to update a couple of the factors. Before we start doing that work, we wanted to remind the members and, of course, the public who do watch these meetings about what the formula is and how it works. This is an informational presentation only to set the stage for the work that you'll see over the next handful of months. The cost share applies to each project's eligible costs. So I want to just take a second to talk about what those eligible costs are. When we look at a project, particularly a major project versus a systemic project, the eligible costs start with the eligible enrollment projections, the number of students that we will fund. We multiply that by a square footage per student and the IAC's adopted cost per square foot. All of that gets multiplied by the state cost share percentage, which is what we're talking about today. On July 13th, 2023, the IAC voted to adopt updated state cost shares for fiscal year 25 and 26 in accordance with the statutory and regulatory requirements. You can see in the last column of the slide the differences between those calculations and the prior state cost shares that were in place for FY 23 and 24. One point that I really want to emphasize is that these cost shares are applied at the project level, and they don't have any bearing on the total amount of funding that's received by an LEA.
Okay.
So onto the actual calculation, the formula consists of 7 factors. The first is the percentage of the state share of the foundation program, which of course is calculated by MSDE every year. The second is the guaranteed tax base program add-on, which is a percentage of the foundation program that is applied when a county has less than 80% of the statewide average wealth per pupil. Our formula divides the amount of the state aid provided by the program by the foundation program of the LEA and adds those percentage points to the state cost share. Third is 1/5 of the amount by which an LEA's free and reduced price meal percentage exceeds the state average. Fourth is 5 percentage points for 1 Maryland counties that meet specified unemployment rate thresholds. Next is 5 percentage points for Tier 1 counties that meet specified median household income thresholds. The percentage points by which 5-year enrollment growth exceeds the statewide average enrollment growth for the same period. And finally, the percentage points by which outstanding school construction debt plus an LEA's PAYGO funding exceed 1% of the county wealth. So that's a lot of numbers. I know I just threw a lot of information at you in one slide. I would be happy to, of course, go over this in more detail with any member who is interested. And we do provide this information, the agenda on our website, so that's available for anyone who wants to reference it later. Finally, I just want to take a minute to review some of the recently approved project-based add-ons to the state cost share that Alex referenced in his introduction. These add-ons were authorized under 2022 House Bill 1290, and while they're not specifically a part of the formula itself, they do provide additional funding at the project level, which in many cases can offset the decrease an LEA might experience in an overall state cost share in a calculation period, since these are new. They include 10 percentage points if the proposed school construction project has a concentration of poverty level of 80% or higher. If the concentration of poverty is between 55 and 80%, it's a 5 percentage point add-on. There is an add-on for 5 percentage points if the proposed school construction project is at a school that rated good or superior on the most recent maintenance effectiveness assessment. Or they're also eligible for that add-on if they received an adequate, but also had an expected useful lifespan average of the systems at the school of at least 120%. This is interesting, Mr. Chair, because this is pulling in the results of those two different assessments that we do, the statewide facilities assessment and the maintenance effectiveness assessment, to add a state cost share percentage on the funding side. Finally, there is an add-on for any school that is built to be net zero energy. That's 5 percentage points. We look forward to talking to you a lot more about the state cost share formula over the next handful of months. And of course, we're happy to take any questions that you have for us today. But I also want to mention, I know this is a lot of information to digest, and members may not entirely know what questions they have. We're also happy to talk to any commission member at any time about any of this in more detail. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Any questions for Cassandra on her presentation? So in reviewing the 7 criteria that you showed earlier, do you review each one? Do you get input from the legislature? How do you go about deciding what needs to be changed or might be?
So, Mr. Chair, in calculating the formula, we just follow what's there. We don't have to talk to anybody. We have been looking at changes that might need to be made, and we're doing that, Mr. Chair, especially in light of informational factors that exist because of Blueprint that did not exist before, is where we think there may be some appropriate updates to the formula. So there may be better measures, for example, than free and reduced price meals, which was a representative of kind of local socioeconomic need. I think there are better factors now that we can consider, and that's what we are talking to people about in the next handful of months, and we'll bring to you soon.
Mr. Derenberg.
I have a question. So it looks like Caroline County has the biggest percentage increase, right? 6%? Am I reading that right?
Yes, Mr. Derenberg, you are.
So if, in my mind, so what caused it? Was it that made them increase that much? Do you
That is
know?
a really good question, Mr. Derenberg. You're going to have to forgive my memory. We did these calculations over a year ago, but I would be happy to look at my workbook. I can absolutely pinpoint what that change was based on and give you a call.
Because I think the enrollment's like about 100 or something like that. Smaller school district, right?
Yeah, so there are a lot of typically the changes that you're going to see around 5 or 6% are because they fell into eligibility for one or more of the add-ons that they hadn't been eligible for before. I'll find out what that is and I will let you know.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, Cassandra. Okay, let's go to item 4, FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program Amendment, Washington County Public Schools, Boonesboro High School HVAC project. Lisa?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. Through the FY 2025 CIP, Washington County Public Schools requested funding for the Boonesboro High School HVAC project in the amount of $7,262,500. Due to fiscal constraints, the project was approved with a partial award of $7,099,713 at the May 9th, 2024 IAC meeting. WCPS has requested to amend the FY 2025 CIP to increase the awarded amount from $7,099,713 to $7,262,500 by applying $162,787 from their reserve account to fully fund this project. I will now read the motion, which is to amend the Washington County Public Schools FY 2025 CIP Boonesboro High School HVAC project by increasing the awarded amount from $7,099,713 to $7,262,500 by applying $162,787 from the LEA's reserve account.
Thank you, Lisa. Do I hear a motion for purposes of discussion? Ms. Everhart makes a motion, Mr. Gibbons seconds. Any questions for Lisa about this? Okay, all in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Item 5, FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program Revision, St. Mary's County Public Schools, Lady Marshall Dent Elementary School, limited renovation, and Piney Point Elementary School HVAC
You
replacement.
want me to drive or you gonna drive? Okay.
Gene?
Morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. IAC staff received a request from St. Mary's County Public Schools in mid-August to cancel 4 design and FF&E contracts and rescind all remaining design and construction funding from the Lady Marshall Dent Elementary School limited renovation project be applied to the Piney Point Elementary School HVAC replacement project through an amendment to the FY 2025 CIP in order to avoid shortfalls in cash flow on the Piney Point project. Total current state CIP funds versus the proposed amendment for this project are shown on Table 1. If approved, there will still be a balance of $1,413,462 needed to fully fund the Piney Point Elementary School project. St. Mary's County Public Schools has requested in the same letter to fund this balance through the Built to Learn Act funds as presented in item 6 of this agenda. IAC staff recommend approval of the request. I will now read the motion, which is to amend the FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program for St. Mary's County Public Schools by rescinding $2,136,880 in FY 2025 CIP funds for the Lady Marshall Dent Elementary School limited renovation project, contingent upon approval of cancellation of $828,382 of contracts as presented in item 2D of the consent agenda, and transferring the funds to the LEA's reserve account. 2, to reducing the maximum state allocation of Lady Marshall Dent Elementary School limited renovation project from $22,935,000 to $20,798,120. And 3, increasing the funding award for the Piney Point Elementary School HVAC replacement project by applying $2,136,880 from the LEA's reserve account and amending the previously approved contract for Piney Point Elementary School HVAC replacement project with Paramount Mechanical Corporation from a total allocation of $2,404,518 to $4,541,398. I will now stand for questions.
Thank you, Gene. Do we hear a motion on this?
So moved, Gloria Lawler.
Thank you. Second? Mr. League, thank you very much. Discussion and questions for Gene on this motion. Mr. Derenberg.
So Gene, on number item 4, did the price go up to 4 million or was it always 4 million? 4.5 million?
So both of these projects are running in parallel. Letty Marshall Dent actually came in under estimates for the bids, and that's why there is also an increased balance. St. Mary's County Public Schools had requested balance funding for the Piney Point Elementary School project through the FY25 CIP. However, due to fiscal constraints, they were not able to get that full balance request. So this is a strategy to keep the project fully funded because the local cash flow currently cannot support the second year of the project. They do have local funding in place to cover all of the design contracts that are being canceled through item 2D of the consent agenda.
So the cost of Piney Point's air conditioner is going to be 4.5 million.
Correct.
Okay, they're just perfect. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 6, Built to Learn program, St. Mary's County Public Schools, Piney Point Elementary School, HVAC replacement. Gene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted in the previous IAC agenda item, the amendment to the FY 2025 CIP would still leave a balance to fulfill the full maximum state allocation for the Piney Point Elementary School HVAC project in the amount of $1,413,462. BTL projects have a $4 million minimum requirement, and St. Mary's County Public Schools has requested the executive director of the IAC to grant an exception to this. The LEA has advised staff that without the additional state funding, they would not have the local funding available to complete the project. IAC staff have coordinated with Maryland Stadium Authority and understand they are comfortable with this exception. IAC staff recommend approval of this request. I will now read the motion, which is to, contingent upon approval of item 5 of this agenda, award $1,413,462 in Built to Learn funding to the St. Mary's County Public Schools Piney Point Elementary School HVAC replacement project. I will now stand for questions.
Thank you, Gene. Questions? Secretary Flora.
Is that gonna, maybe it's in here, but is that gonna fully fund the HVAC project? Is there still gonna be any gap for them?
There will be no gap after this
Okay.
in the maximum state allocation to eligible costs. The state can participate in this project
Okay,
through the actions of item 5 and 6.
so with the state share, do they have the remaining funds needed to move forward on this project then?
With the state share, they do have local funds that would be their responsibility to keep this project moving forward to completion.
And they have that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. On this, I would just like to note that this is a smart request and move on the part of St. Mary's County Public Schools because it will maximize the dollars they have available to local and state levels in the time they need it to keep these projects moving forward. What this does show, though, is that St. Mary's County has urgent needs that are exceeding the available state and local funding. And it is showing that, like other districts, they're really struggling to find enough of the funding from all sources to keep the needed projects moving forward in the time they need to do them, to keep the facilities operating the way they ought to. So this is just another example of, I mean, this seems like, right, this is a 4-level agenda item, complicated maneuver to try to get this project supported properly. Yes, this is a lot of effort to get that project supported and moving. Unfortunately, This is becoming more and more needed and common, and other LEAs are facing similar pressures due to the shortfall in funding. So just noting, this may be somewhat new solution that we are supporting here, but it is not surprising, and it's just part of a growing need picture. Thank you.
Mr. Derenberg.
I actually think it's pretty smart that they came up. I don't know how much you guys helped them with it, but it's pretty smart to try to get the job done, or find the funding, get the job done when it's just not there.
Agreed.
Kudos to them, So.
All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 7, Healthy Schools Facility Fund FY 2024 Project Extension Request, Calvert County Public Schools, Windy Hill Middle School Chiller Replacement. Terrian and Lisa.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Calvert County Public Schools has requested 2 deadline extensions for their FY 24 Healthy Schools Facility Fund project, Windy Hill Middle School Chiller Replacement. Based on the timing of when bids will be received, creation of the submittal, review, approval, and release of the chiller, which is the piece of equipment with the longest lead time associated with the project, the work is not expected to begin until fall of 2025. Additionally, in order to properly test the chiller, the LEA will need to wait until June of 2026 when temperatures are warm enough for proper system loading. Accordingly, CCPS has requested that the deadline for the substantial expenditure of funds be extended from October 3rd, 2025 to June 30th of 2026, and that the deadline for the submission of reimbursement requests be extended from May 1st of 2026 to July 31st of 2026. I will now read the motion, which is to approve Calvert County Public Schools' request to extend the FY 24 Healthy School Facility Fund Windy Hill Middle School Chiller Replacement project deadlines for the substantial expenditure of funds to June 30th, 2026, and for the submission of reimbursement requests to July 31st, 2026.
Thank you, Lisa. I hear a motion to that effect. Oh, I hear a
So
motion.
moved.
Secretary Flora makes a motion and Mr. Gibbons seconds. Questions for Lisa about this? Secretary Flora.
Lisa, if anything, seems like the deadline should be a little bit longer. I totally agree with what they're saying in terms of if it's not going to get installed until fall, they need to test out the equipment. I'm not sure that June is long enough to test out the equipment for commissioning. So to be able to fully commission the equipment, it seems like they would have to go even longer into the really, more intensive heat months of July, August, because some of the biggest failures with these types of systems is during the commissioning period, which wouldn't have been fully tested by the end of June. So I'm actually in support of potentially extending it longer because of the need for that commissioning period to make sure the equipment is appropriately operating and which is
Good point.
These types of systems.
You have any thoughts, Mr. Gibbons? About that point?
Sorry about that. I was muted. I think it's a good point. I would think that they would know what they need in terms of timing. I assume, Lisa, that's what they requested.
Yes, Mr. Gibbons. I double checked the time frame with them as well. They thought they could get this project completed in June, but Secretary Flora made some very good points that they might need a little bit more time than they're actually thinking themselves.
For testing.
Yes.
Is
Derenberg.
I'd rather have them more time than come back to us and say, "Oh, we need more time." Yeah, it's kind of been a habit in a lot of cases. So I'd rather just give them the time they need.
You mean what they've requested, or to add? What do you mean?
Add. I would say add, to be honest.
Okay. Secretary Flora?
Yeah, if anything, I would want to see full commissioning through the summer months, through July, August, because they won't really know if the system is properly installed and fully operational. And with that kind of lead time on this piece of equipment, I would rather have that be on the installer. So I would be in favor of a friendly amendment that would actually extend this by at least 2 months of the, no, even the expenditure funds, they've got to go. They've got to commission it through the end of August, which means that they're not going to be able to expend. They should not be making payments until they're sure that it's fully commissioned through the end of August. So this would almost result in it extending almost through the end of 2026. But I'll leave it to the staff to.
2026,
That would be my perception based on these types of units.
Gene?
And involved.
Gene, you want to?
I also wanted to echo the comments on the extension. Even after they fully complete commissioning, there still may be some contractor closeout activities that I think it would be beneficial to add a couple of months to this project reimbursement request deadline.
Is there anyone has any concerns about that concept? Shall we make?
Mr. Chair, we can amend those, two dates to be, November 1st and December 1st respectively, if that's comfortable.
Okay, we're going to amend the motion to extend those deadlines, both the testing and the payments, right? Is that right, Mr. Alex?
Technically, the first one is for expenditure. End of October would be seemingly reasonable, and then reimbursement could be, December.
Okay.
Yeah, is there anything pushing the expenditure? Because like was noted, we don't want them coming back. We want it done. I wouldn't want the money being spent until they're sure everything's working. So, I mean, there's nothing that would prevent us from extending.
Well, no, Madam Secretary. However, I will note that we have been in extensive discussions with Department of Budget Management about expenditure of appropriations within hopefully the fiscal year or very closely thereafter. And it would be best to not push these farther than needed.
Yeah, agreed.
So
do we need to do this today, or can we do it next month once you get the language exactly the way it should be? Alex?
Gene, do they need this answered immediately, or can we take one more month to submit a revised agenda item with the extended dates?
Were you saying? Oh, I'm sorry. You said Gene, but I think this is for Lisa. I'll
sorry,
defer
for Lisa. Correct.
Yes, sorry about that. I think it can wait another month. They have not gone to bid on the project yet. It is expected for fall very soon, but I think if we communicate with them, we need one more month. I think that is acceptable.
All right.
Yeah, I'd just rather have the language, correct and not do something on the fly and make a mistake, if that's okay with everybody. We'll do
Absolutely,
this.
Mr. Chair.
We'll
bring it back next month.
Okay.
And that will also hopefully permit time to have the bid come in, which would be even better.
Okay. Item 8, COMAR 14-39, amendment to modular construction section reference. Cassandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I like it when I can bring you all a good, easy item. We are updating COMAR, or recommending to update COMAR for a citation cross-reference that's in our COMAR that simply defines modular construction. I do want to take a second, Mr. Chair, and just clarify, because we experience a lot of confusion in the public, that modular construction and relocatables are not the same thing. Modular construction is simply anything that's prefabricated off-site and then used in the construction of a school facility. The Department of Housing already has definitions of modular construction, but our statute requires us to define modular construction. Rather than doing that ourselves, we cross-reference to the modular construction definition that's been adopted by the Department of Housing. They recodified that citation. So this change simply updates our reference to their citation to the correct COMAR. The motion, Mr. Chair, is to approve amendments to COMAR 1439-0212. which update the citation defining modular construction from COMAR 050204 to COMAR 091252.
Do I hear a motion? Secretary Flora, second by Mr. Derenberg. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand or say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 9, fiscal year 2024 maintenance of Maryland's public school buildings annual report. Scott and Brooke. Somebody want to introduce this issue? Alex, you want to tell us what we're looking at? What's going to be
Sure.
talking?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott and Brooke, as they do every year, will present the summary of the annual report for the Maintenance Effectiveness Assessment Program. It is one of the 2 assessment programs that the IAC operates ongoingly. It is the program in which we visit a sample set of school facilities in each LEA to assess the effectiveness of the school district's maintenance program. And this will provide you with details on the program and the results for this past fiscal 24 year. And I'm pleased to hand it over to Scott and Brooke now to present.
This isn't the program where we go out and inspect X number of schools throughout the state.
Correct. It's not the program where we have to inspect 350 schools a year. That's the statewide facility assessment of condition. Okay. This one is the assessment of maintenance effectiveness, okay. And we do about 175 or so site visits for this program per year. It's not mandated in terms of a number.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott?
Thank you, Alex. For the record, I'm Scott Snyder. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission.
Good morning.
Today, we present for your approval the IAC's annual report on maintenance of Maryland's public school facilities for fiscal year 2024. This report is the product of the hard work of our assessment and maintenance group. With me today to talk about the IAC's Maintenance Effectiveness Assessment, or MEA, and the annual report is Administrative Officer Brooke Finneran. As background information, I will first briefly summarize the nature of the 2 very different assessments the IAC conducts of public pre-K through 12 school facilities in the state. The first type is the assessment of the condition of educational sufficiency of a facility as part of the IAC's statewide facility assessment, or SFA. Maryland law requires that the IAC visit every pre-K through 12 facility for an SFA assessment at least once every 4 years. This assessment generates a facility score that reflects the specific facility's condition and educational sufficiency. The second type is an assessment of the effectiveness of the maintenance conducted by each school district on its facilities. This maintenance effectiveness assessment, or MEA, is what we are covering now in this presentation. The MEA assesses the effectiveness of the school district's maintenance each year by looking at the results of the maintenance in a sample set of about 9% of the district's facilities, with a minimum number being 3 in the case of the smallest LEAs. The IAC has conducted maintenance inspections since 2007. Beginning in fiscal year 2021, IAC staff implemented a new maintenance effectiveness assessment intended to meet the IAC's statutory responsibilities and as part of its technical assistance to the LEAs. The assessment focuses on the things that have a substantial and direct impact on teaching and learning and the longevity of the building systems and the facility. This includes maintenance management, which includes maintaining and following preventive maintenance, or PM, plans, as well as the use of a computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS. The outcome that serves as our benchmark level of maintenance effectiveness is that which, on average, is likely to support achieving the full expected lifespan from a given building system and the facility. This level of maintenance earns an adequate rating. Therefore, adequate truly is the minimum level of maintenance effectiveness that we want to see at every school and every building system. In addition to rating the effectiveness of maintenance, on each major area of a facility. The assessor can log the existence of any observed deficiency in a building that poses an immediate or potential threat to the life, safety, or health of occupants of the facility, and to encourage the LEAs to remediate those deficiencies as quickly as possible. Identified major or minor deficiencies apply a multiplier and result in a reduced score for the facility in the appropriate category. Examples of major deficiencies would be the presence of mold, broken playground equipment with sharp edges, exposed live electrical parts in student-occupied areas, or a non-functional HVAC system. Examples of minor deficiencies would be clogged drains that could result in water infiltrating the building, trip hazards from damaged walkways, stairs, or unprotected cables across walking paths, non-functional emergency eye wash stations, depleted battery backup and exit and emergency light fixtures, or missing or insufficiently secured ceiling tiles. This feature incentivizes the quick elimination of deficiencies that can harm occupants or cause a near-term loss of educational function. The LEA has 15 calendar days from receipt of the preliminary assessment to submit an action plan showing how it will address the deficiency. So long as the LEA submits satisfactory evidence within 45 calendar days that it has taken or is taking action to correct the deficiency, IAC staff can remove the deficiency note and adjust the score accordingly. Correcting just a handful of deficiencies can, in some cases, shift the facility's overall score up an entire rating level. The assessment results in fiscal year 2024 are comparable only with those from the previous 3 fiscal years. As compared with the results from fiscal year 2023, the average overall LEA in fiscal year 2024 had an upward shift of about 1.23%. Now Brooke will talk about the assessment results described in the annual report.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. For the record, I am Brooke Finneran. Page 98 of the agenda shows that 145 assessments were conducted in FY 2024. 106 school facilities, approximately 73% of facilities assessed in FY 24, received a passing rating, with 97 or approximately 67% of facilities earning an adequate overall rating. This suggests that nearly 3/4 of assessed facilities are being maintained adequately overall. However, 39 school facilities, approximately 27% of facilities assessed, received either a not adequate or a poor overall rating, suggesting that the building systems or facilities will not achieve their full expected lifespans if the level of maintenance is not improved, which will likely lead to increased maintenance costs as the conditions of the building systems decline prematurely. The statewide average maintenance effectiveness rating by facility was 71.77%, which falls within the adequate range under the IAC's rating system. 16 of 24, or 67% of LEAs, earn an average overall maintenance effectiveness rating of adequate. 8 LEAs earned a rating of not adequate. Page 103 of the agenda shows the statistics for passing versus failing ratings by category. LEA maintenance effectiveness was highest in the building system categories of floors, roof drains, gutters and downspouts, electrical distribution and service equipment, and windows, caulking, and skylights. LEA maintenance effectiveness was lowest in the building system categories of fire and safety system and utility controls, and playgrounds, equipment, and fields. For any deficiency noted in a preliminary report, the LEA may request that the IAC remove the deficiency's negative score effect from the overall facility score in the IAC's final MEA report. At its discretion, the IAC may reduce or remove the negative score impact of a minor or major deficiency if an acceptable action plan and final response are submitted on time and sufficient proof of remediation is included. The parameters for the removal of deficiencies can be found in the MEA deficiency removal guidelines posted on our IAC website. The LEAs accrued a total of 275 deficiencies that were not remediated. The categories listed under building equipment and systems collectively received 103 of those deficiencies. It is important to note that the number of deficiencies accrued by LEAs range significantly, from a low of 0 to a high of 7.7 per school facility assessed. As was the case last year, our experience this year suggests that some of the higher numbers result from some LEAs having more portfolio than they have the resources to maintain. Or in some instances, the LEAs didn't provide the proper documentation to support their remediation efforts. The MEA includes 2 categories under maintenance management, which focus primarily on the LEA's use of their CMMS to plan, execute, and document preventive and reactive maintenance efforts. This would also include work that takes place with the assistance of contractual services. In FY 2024, more than half of facilities received a failing rating in these categories, largely due to a significant number of work orders remaining open for extended periods of time and/or neglecting to describe steps being taken towards a resolution. Computerized maintenance management systems are a crucial tool that LEAs must fully and properly utilize to oversee the operations and maintenance of their facilities. A CMMS, if used well, will track the work order history of each asset, including all associated parts and labor costs. This data can be used to hold staff and contractors accountable for their work and find problem areas of recurring issues with specific assets that will influence system repair or replacement funding decisions and identify staff shortages. IAC staff will continue to work closely with LEA maintenance leaders to support them in deploying solutions and best practices that will help the LEAs improve the maintenance of their facilities and thereby better support teaching and learning. The IAC's Maintenance Effectiveness Assessment will continue to be a powerful tool for this work. Mr. Chair, I am happy now to stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Brooke. Questions for Brooke or Scott? So is there any action we need to take on this, Alex?
This is approval of the
Report.
actual report for the year, so it can be submitted to the General Assembly and the governor as required under statute. But before we do that, I see
No, I agree.
Secretary Flora might have a question.
Yes, I just wanted to know what you wanted us to do with it.
Yes, we have
Secretary Flora.
Did you want Alex?
He's finished. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of questions. Building equipment and systems deficiencies, to what degree are those higher due to the assessment rubrics, where I noticed that the weighting is much heavier in that category also? And, to what extent does the weighting in the rubric get reassessed?
So the weighting in the rubric has been the product of the last few years worth of program development. It can be adjusted as needed. I'd like to have Scott describe a little bit kind of how we came to the weighting there. We have not had a cause to look at the weighting again since the last update or revision about a year and a half ago, but happy to take any input you might have. If it's something kind of technical, then we may want to just set up time to chat offline to see what your thoughts are on that. But Scott, if you could just briefly summarize what we have on the weights there, that would be, I think, should respond to this question.
Sure. So basically, we looked at industry standards across the board and what we felt was going to be the most impactful in the facilities or most problematic for maintenance staffs to maintain based off of preventive maintenance schedules, staffing situations, and current trends on new equipment being installed and the complexities behind taking care of them. So we felt that the weighting in that category would be and should be significantly heavier than some other categories. Hopefully that answered your question.
Not entirely, but I think it's just pointing out the fact that the outcomes are very directly related to that weighting rubric and ensuring that we sort of, I think, fully understand the basis and, you know, how that's most affecting health, welfare, in addition to the building, which the other question I had is, I think I saw early on something, a reference to 30 years as the sort of expected lifespan. Schools used to last 100 years, and so I'm just, is that a lifespan that we're presuming is the maximum for school building?
No, Mr. Chair, if I might give a little more background on that topic. The IAC has for some time taken the approach that a reasonable expected useful lifespan of a school building is about 60 years.
Thank you. Okay.
Right? There are a couple of reasons why 100 is no longer realistic. One is the change in technologies as well as the requirements for building performance. And then the second one is the rapidly changing nature of educational programs and services, which mean that even a 40-year-old building may have been designed in a manner that just does not work well today for education. And so we have seen that a good basic general kind of rule of thumb is that if we're looking for a useful lifespan of about 60 years, with some major renovation and system replacement and updates at about a 30-year period, then that's kind of the time span that we think in. However, in looking at specific maintenance of building systems, discrete systems, right? Many of them have an average lifespan in the 20 to 30 range. And so that's kind of what I think you're seeing pop up here is that sort of system lifespan, not building lifespan, system lifespan kind of a reality. Does that answer?
I think
Your
that
concern?
gets the issue. I guess I would have, we can talk offline.
Yeah, happy to do that.
The broader
I'll
implications. But
I'll
thank
follow
you.
up with you.
I'll let it go for now. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Derenberg,
Secretary.
Do we use this for funding purposes or no?
So it does bear in now to the add-ons in that the maintenance effectiveness scores for the schools can, if the score is high enough, lead to eligibility for the extra 5% state share on a project in that building. So yes, and that's relatively new.
So when do we, as like the fire and safety systems, have me concerned at 57%. We don't do anything about that, right? We just report it and like, do we sound the alarm or do we not sound the alarm? Say, hey, not acceptable.
If the assessors see a major deficiency or anything that is immediate threat to life, safety, health, they immediately notify the school staff and the district staff. It actually gets back. Scott is notified. I'm notified. If there's anything urgent, we can jump right on that and have a conversation literally within minutes with the school district to make sure that we understand what they're doing to remediate that issue. The long-term consequences are we use the remediation incentive to help encourage school districts to make corrections to both major and minor deficiencies during the time period of the open report, right? So that they can end up improving their score on that assessment, but also the issue gets fixed faster. There are the ultimate responsibility, of course, for addressing any deficiencies is on the owner of the facility, which is the school district, not on the IAC.
So when we start with the P3s, does that go to the developer or does that go to the...
So that's a little bit of a complicated situation, but in a nutshell, the IAC will visit and assess those new P3 schools as part of both of our assessment programs on an ongoing basis. They'll be addressed just like every other building in the portfolios, right? They'll get maintenance effectiveness assessments periodically, and they'll get a condition assessment at least once every 4 years. Now, in addition to that, the P3 contract with the vendor requires them to do additional things that will be providing information and accountability on the vendor for the school system. And the IAC will get reports from the school system on an annual basis about what's happening with things, including maintenance, many other topics too, but including maintenance. So we're going to have the IAC's assessments of those new P3 buildings, our staff visiting. Then we're going to have additional reporting and data from the CMMS systems that the vendor uses. And we'll be able to have a lot of visibility into those new school buildings.
So Scott,
It'll be
they
pretty.
get more work to do.
No, Scott and Brick don't get more work to do as a result of the P3, but we as an agency will get more information about those schools than even other schools in the portfolio of Prince George's. So I think it's well covered.
So maybe I missed it, but so who pays for the improvement in the P3? School system or the developer?
So the developer is required during a 30-year time period to pay the cost of maintenance on those facilities to keep them to certain standards that are laid out in the agreement.
So what was the problem with the playground that I saw that got the one major violation? Or was it what was that problem? Anybody know? To get it fixed? Do we know if it got fixed?
It was a set of bleachers, Chair, outside near the football stadium. All the support mechanisms were crumbling and the bleachers were teetering pretty badly.
So has it been fixed?
They're removing them.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott or Brooke? Okay, do I hear a motion that we accept the annual?
Actually, Mr. Chair, could we have Brooke read the technical motion?
Oh yeah. Okay, I didn't know it was a technical. Go ahead, Brooke.
Thank you. The motion is to approve the final draft of the FY 2024 report, Maintenance of Maryland's Public School Buildings, dated October 1st, 2024, pending non-substantive edits by staff.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Mr. Derenberg, second by Mr. League. Any more comments or questions about the report? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might just very briefly, I'd just like to extend my thanks to Scott, Brooke, and the entire maintenance assessment team who have been traveling all over the state this year for 150 or so assessments. A lot of work, a lot of great outreach and interfacing with our school districts, and lots of conversations, phone calls about the content. Great work on the report as well. I'm just really happy to see this come out and to show the public how we are out there working to support the school districts and delivering good teaching and learning environments that are not just nice from the start when built, but also maintained well. Well, thank you.
Well, I agree. Thank you very much, Scott and Brooke and your team. Should have mentioned that. Any other thoughts? Announcements. Two things I just wanted to mention. First, I was remiss in not thanking the staff who volunteered to go to Ocean City to man our booth on the Mako conference. Appreciate you giving up your time to go down there. Second, we are trying to arrange to present to the legislature in their opening days to make a report or a presentation regarding funding and where we see the state going and what the needs are. Alex is going to try to arrange that to the committees which deal with their issues. Any other announcements anyone wants to make? Do I hear a motion that we adjourn? Mr. Derenberg and Mr. Gibbons second. All in favor, say aye. Good to see you all. Talk to you next month. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.